Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here at the Spartan Rocketry Club, finishing up our build of the Pro Series version of the Nike Smoke from Estes. In the intervening time, I've clear coated the rocket with spray paint to make sure that the decals are protected. Not that there are many of them, but you know, we might as well, right? So the other thing that I have done is I attached the inside of the rail buttons, mostly because it's a pain and you wouldn't really be able to see me do anything anyway. So if you recall, I had drilled holes and I had test fit this part, the part that's inside now, by pushing it down in, and it worked perfectly fine. This one down here is fragile because there isn't really much material here left, but there's enough and it should hold. If I were concerned about that, I might consider putting a little bit of crazy glue or something, CA glue, around it just to reinforce it, but I'm pretty sure that this looks solid as is. Anyway, to actually attach the rail button, these are the parts that come with the kit. These flanges, of course, yeah, they're part of the kit too. This one, by the way, stinks because you have to reach your hand inside and push it out. I flip it over like this so you can push down with gravity instead of trying to push up against it. It's not fun, and this is what, like a 3-inch tube. That's about as small a diameter as I can comfortably get my hand into. So I actually farm out this work to smaller-handed people like children or my wife from time to time. But this one I could manage by myself. Anyway, putting the button part on is pretty easy. You just put that on, and then the screw goes in. You can hand tighten this if you want to, but it doesn't really need to be super tight. Also, I'm not going to over tighten this for one other reason, and that is this particular rocket, the nose cone of it is wider right at the base than the body tube is. So that means that if these were completely flush with the rocket body, I wouldn't be able to get it on the rod. So here's the nose cone again. It bumps out just a little bit right here. This is the diameter of the tube. It bumps out, you know, like 1/8 of an inch maybe. So I actually went and test fit this on my rod to make sure that just the way the buttons are right now, it should be able to just slide on, and it does. It's a little snug. It's not bad, but I definitely don't want to like over tighten these. They don't really need to be all that tight to begin with, but I really don't want them pushed terribly far against the tube. The little distance at the bottom, you know, on the bottom of the button, that's pretty much enough to get over the lip of the nose cone. So that's good enough. The 1/4-inch rod, you can see, has a pretty significant, like a 1/4 inch offset to make sure it gets up and around the nose cone. Alright, so that was one of the two things that needed to be done, not a complicated thing. The other things are, you know, pretty important. Oops, that's a nose cone, but not complicated. So we need to put the retainer on. This is just going to fit over the back here. There is a little bit of red paint that got in here, but it's not going to make any difference. It fits perfectly fine. So the instructions actually call for using epoxy on this. I don't know why you'd want to use epoxy on this. I'm just going to use some CA, and I'm going to put it pretty far back. I'm not going to put it right up next to the edge of this for a couple of reasons. One is I want to make sure that I get the retainer up and into position. You know, I don't want it to make it most of the way and then have the glue start to set. So that's good enough. So I'm just gonna go on like so, one quick motion, and that's already set. So that's great. The other reason is I've had some smaller diameter ones, like 18 millimeters. This is 29, but smaller ones. And I haven't been able to get the motor inside the tube because when I put the glue on it, a little bit of it smeared out in the gap between the let's see, like right here in this gap. There isn't any this time because there wasn't enough glue to smear up, but in a smaller diameter tube, I've had it happen more than once. And it just kind of oozed out and made a, pretty rough bit of, I don't know, extra material. And then the diameter of the hole wasn't as big as it should have been, and I couldn't get the motor in. So I ended up having to, I didn't have any sandpaper, I was doing this in the field, so I had to grab a pocket knife and just kind of shave the interior of that, which isn't something I particularly want to do. So I am going to actually test that at home. I might just end up sanding it on general principle, but yeah, that's how that works. And then the other end of it is just, is just going to screw in place to hold the motor. I am not going to screw that in place now in case there's any extraneous glue, and I really don't want that to get permanently attached. All right. The last thing then is we need to attach the nose cone to the rocket and put the parachute on. So that's quick and easy. Here's the parachute. It's a nice nylon one. By the way, the nylon ones, as nice as they are not indestructible. I mean, obviously they're not, nothing is, but I've had one fail, not catastrophically, but I actually had the stitches burst out of it right here. So I'm guessing that that's the failure point. I think the one that's most likely to fail would be the stitching holding the nylon cord, or whatever this is, pretty sure it's nylon, into the parachute itself. That's, that's fixable. If you can hand stitch it back on or get a sewing machine, I guess, but hopefully that won't come up. Let's get this out of the way. There's the nose cone. Two things need to go into the nose cone. We gotta tie this in like so. As per usual, I'm gonna knot this like 3 or 4 times. You really don't want this coming apart. This rocket is quite heavy. And even a small rocket, honestly, if it's coming down without a chute, especially if it's coming down ballistically, the amount of energy it contains is surprisingly high. You would not want this falling down on somebody or on somebody's car or somebody's property. So something to be avoided. Anyway, so that's a good 4 knots. Occasionally, I put some glue to hold the knot together. The instructions don't call for it. I think I'm all right with it. I don't think I will, but you might want to consider just a little bit of glue here. Even wood glue wouldn't be that bad. So I'm going to slide that out of the way, at least for the moment. I'm going to slide it back later once everything's all prepared. But to get the parachute all together, let's see if I can't get that out of the way a little bit. I'm just going to slide it out so I have as much space to work with. All right, unfurling the parachute. This is a big parachute. Necessary again because the rocket is very heavy. All right. All the shroud lines. Boy, there we go. Okay, so the shroud lines in this, there are 4 of them. The usual plastic Estes chutes, there are only 3. Because there are 4 of them, they start and end, they're adjacent to each other. So some of your shroud lines are going to end up crossing a little bit when you gather them up. It's unavoidable. Just try to keep the amount of tangling to a minimum. Like these are rather tangled at the moment, so we'll do our best to untangle them as I gather them up. Alright, so that's all 4. Oftentimes I use a fishing barrel swivel. These are the biggest ones I have. It's not going to fit in the eye. So if you want to go this approach, if I wanted to go this approach anyway, I would need bigger ones than I have. So I'm just going to forego that. I'm going to do the classic approach where I'm going to tie it directly into the nose cone. So all you need to do, and this is in the instructions, is gather that loop, push it through the eyelet in the nose cone, and then the parachute just goes right through it, and then pull it taut. So I have a little bit of a, these are a little bit crossed over. Again, I think that's unavoidable. That's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna make sure both of these things are slid down into this portion of the eyelet, because if it's on here, it's not gonna fit in the rocket body. This is about as, it's right up against the body tube, so that's no good. This little amount of excess probably won't hurt anything, but if you want, you could trim that off. But yeah, that does it. All we gotta do now is pack it up. The last thing I'll say in closing about building this is that if you end up using an Estes black powder motor, a 29mm motor, remember we did not put, there was this, this is a motor, an engine block. I didn't put this in anyway. You could if you wanted to, and you only ever planned on using 29mm motors. I do not plan on just using 29mm motors. I plan on, well, not the black powder ones anyway. I suspect that when I fly this, more often than not, I would be using a composite of some sort, a reloadable or whatever. You're going to have to, if you use the black powder motor, you're going to have to run several layers of tape around the edge of it, masking tape, to build up a little bit of a retaining wall, I guess you could call it, around the outside of it. Because nothing else is going to stop it. And typically when we use black powder motors, it's being held in place by the engine block at the far end of the motor mount. Well, there isn't one in this rocket. So you're going to have to, essentially, there's just going to be a little bit of masking tape, I guess, here holding it in, and when you attach this, it's not going to seal down the whole way. That little bit of excess is going to just get kind of clamped in place inside the retainer right here. Now, if you use pretty much anything else, including if you wanted to use a 24mm motor using the Estes adapter, which is a really nice purchase, by the way. They're very cheap, but it allows you, I have 29 to 24, and I have 24 to 18. They're nice to use because it gives you a little bit more flexibility. But they have a little plastic lip that'll fit right in here and then clamp in. And composite motors, they have something similar. It's usually metal, but you don't need to worry about them. Just the black powder 29mm motors. All right, oops. That takes care of this build. I'm looking forward to flying this. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. This is a pretty big bit of rocketry here, so it's going to need a nice big field and pretty calm day, one would think. Plus, I'd have to break out my rail, which is a pretty significant expenditure of time, at least to do it by myself. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you in whatever happens to come next. Thanks again.